Okay, we talked earlier about decimals and decimal places. Um, so we have had practice already with naming decimals properly. What I'm going to go over today is just a reminder about adding and subtracting decimals, but we will be focusing more on multiplying and dividing decimals. And decimals are also just part of numbers. They're just like fractions. Okay? They're either a whole and a piece or just a piece of a whole. So before I start the multiplication part, which we will be concentrating on, I want to revisit adding decimals. So when adding decimals, make sure to line the decimals up. And this is for adding and subtracting only. Okay? When we get into multiplication and division, it is different. Okay? So when adding the decimals, make sure to line the decimals up. So if we have 63 hundredths plus 2 and 457 thousandths, I'm going to rewrite it so the decimals are lined up. And if there's nothing here in this column, it's just a 0. And you can either put that 0 in or leave it out. But the decimals have to be lined up. So if there's a missing piece, you have to add in that decimal. This doesn't change the number. Remember, 63 hundredths is the same as 630 thousandths. Same thing. And then you just continue by adding. To get your sum. Same thing for subtracting. Three and 61 hundredths minus 1 and 410 thousandths. And here you can see I have this space on the top here. The number doesn't change if I put the 0. My answer is 2 and 200 thousandths, 2 and 20 hundredths, or 2 and 2 tenths. They're all the same number. All right. Now we're going to go into multiplying decimals. And I know I told you guys at the beginning of the year that I was going to write the standard, and I just keep forgetting. But trust me, these are all 6th grade standards, and I can put them up on the board. You need to know how to multiply decimals and divide decimals and understand the relationships. All right. Multiplying a whole number and a decimal means, remember we're looking for that meaning, how many are total in a group of the decimal, just like the same with a fraction. How many are total in the group of a decimal? And I'm going to show you that using a number line. So I'm going to make a quick number line. and I'm going to go from 0 all the way up to 1.3, or 1 3/10, and I'm going to do every tenth. So 0, 0.1 or 0.10, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9. Comes after 0.9, I get into a hole. 1 or 1.0. 1.1 or 1.10. 1.2, 1.3. So there's my quick little number line. And here's the problem that I'm going to illustrate for you. 3 times 4/10. How many is total when I have 3 groups of 4/10? So if I go from 0 to 4/10, that's my first group. And then I do another group of 4/10, which would put me at 8/10. And then I do another group of 4/10, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that puts me at 1 2/10. That's how we know that it's 3 groups of 4/10 is equal to 1 2/10. If I were to write this the algorithm way, it would be 3 times 0.4. And I can put the 0 before the 4 or not. It doesn't change my answer. It makes it easier for me to multiply this way. 3 times 4 is 12, and then I have a decimal here that goes in one place. So I put my decimal here one place. 1.2, 1.2. This is the regular algorithm way. This is why it works. All right, I gotta flip my page. I know lots of you still have plenty of room. Okay, I'm going to show you some things that are going to make the tricks easier for us. So, let me do some explanations. A whole number, like we just saw in our problem, multiplied by a decimal less than 1 is going to give you a whole number and a decimal. So like we just did in our practice problem, we had a whole number, which was 3, and our decimal less than 1 was 4/10, and it gave us a whole number, which was 1, and a decimal, which was 2/10. A tenth times a tenth will give us 100th. So if I multiply 0.3 times 0.3, it doesn't have to be the same tenth. That's right, 0.8. I'm going to change it. Sorry. I have to change it because I don't want it to be the same. A tenth times a tenth. These are both in the tenths place. I just multiply the numbers. 8 times 3 is 24. And since I have a decimal here and a decimal here, I go in 2 places and it gives me 100th. 24 hundredths. Just like a 10 times a 10 would give me 100. We're just making our decimals go the opposite direction. A tenth times a thousandth is going to give me a 10,000. The 10,000th. And this is how you check to make sure your answer makes sense when you're doing your multiplication. So a tenth, let's use 0.3 again, times a thousandth, let's use 0.211, we'll make it easy. That's going to give us tenth. 3. That's a tenth. That's a thousandth. 3. 3. 6. Wait, that doesn't work. Tenths, thousandths, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That still gave me a thousandth. Oh, because I need to move my decimal place. That's why. Sorry. My number is 3, 3, 6, but I go in 1 place here and 3 places here. My decimal goes here. I have a blank space in here, and in that blank space equals a 0. So my answer is 0.0633. I kind of taught you that backwards, and I apologize. My brain is fried. So because I know my answer is going to be a 10,000th, and I have 3 decimal places here and 1 decimal place here, that gives me 4 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I don't have anything in that space, I have to put a 0. Just like a 10 times 1,000 would give me a 10,000. It's the backwards. We're going backwards. And you can tell by the place value. Let's do some let's do 6 and 4/10 times a whole number. We know a whole number and a decimal is going to give us another whole number and a decimal. And we'll line it up. And we'll multiply like we normally multiply. This for me, I'm going to break, even though it's a decimal, I'm going to break it up. I'm going to do 60 times 13 Wait, I'm going totally backwards. I told you my brain is fried. 13 times 60. That way I only have to do the first part. 6, 12, 18, 780 plus 13 times 4. That's going to give me my 60 and my 4. Man, my brain is really fried, guys. I'm sorry. 4, 8, 12, 52. Add them together. I get 834. Oh, it's 52. God. This is Miss Rios's Night of mistakes. Okay. But when we catch our mistakes, we learn from it. So that's better. So for me, I broke it up. You can do the standard algorithm here. I got 832. And then I think about my decimal at the end. So I have a decimal one place in. So I put my decimal place here, one place in. And now I have a whole number, which is 83, and a decimal, or a decimal, which is a part. Here's another one. And I'm just going to go ahead and line it up. I don't want to think about the decimals right now. I'll come back and worry about them later. I don't line them up. I line up the numbers when I multiply. Line up the numbers. Don't worry about the decimal places right now. In fact, I could even rewrite this as 14 times 4 and come back and worry about those decimals afterwards. So I'm just going to, right now, 14 times 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, 4, 56. Okay. Now that I have the number, now I can worry about the decimal. This tells me to go in two places. This says 1. That means this number is going to be 3. 1, 2, 3. But I don't have anything here, so I have to fill it with a 0. So my final answer is 0.056. Or 56 thousandths. And we know our answer is correct. I can even put a 0 here if I wanted to. We know our answer is correct because I have 100th times a 10th, which gives me 1,000th. And here's my 1,000th. And I know my answer makes sense because of what we talked about up here. All right, the last thing I want to talk about really quickly, which is going to lead into what we're going to be doing, is the powers of 10. And how powerful the powers of 10 are to help us. And they're going to help us divide. Okay, so I know 10 to the power of 1 just means 10. But 10 to the power of 2 is 10 times 10, which is 100. 10 to the power of 3 is 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000. 10 to the power of 4 is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10, which is 10,000. 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10 to the 5th. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 equals 100,000. Now that I kind of have an idea about the powers of 10, let me show you what it means to see them with the decimal. So, 10 to the negative 1 is like saying 1/10, which is the same as 0.1. 1/10. Here is a 10. Here's the 10. Look, it's just backwards with the decimal place. 10 to the power of negative 2 is 1/10 times 1/10, which is 1/100th, which is the same as 0.8 0, 1. That's the hundredths place. 10 to the negative 3 is 1/10 times 1/10 times 1/10, which equals 1 over 1,000, which is the same as 0, 0, 0, 1, or 1/1000th. Now I want you to finish this off by doing 10 to the negative 4 and 10 to the negative 5, just like I did, so you can start to see the pattern and how it compares. So if I go to a negative power, I'm moving my decimal the opposite way. This positive makes my numbers larger. Negative makes my numbers smaller. And then it creates decimals. So finish off 10 to the power of 4 and 10 to the negative 4th and 10 to the negative 5th. And we'll talk about it tomorrow, and it will help us with this activity that we're going to be doing. Okay, I'm sorry I had so many errors. You know how hard we've been working in class and how much I have to do report cards and stuff, so my brain is crazy. Hopefully you understood this. All right, see you tomorrow.